is Kelly Springer with Dragon Elder Song, and I'm here with Barbara and our friend.
Hi, this is Barbara, the East Coast Dragon Lady,
Yeah,
and we're here with Katara Sky,
Katara
who's
Sky.
our second guest, right? Second guest in our podcast
I
series.
think our third. I think Kevin was our first.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Kevin.
Hello,
No,
hello.
Kevin, Gina, and I forgot about that. Right. So before we get started with our chat, just so you know a little bit about Katara Sky, she's an intuitive healer, channel, and cosmic weaver. She holds transformative spaces to facilitate conscious, purposeful seeking people to more deeply remember who they are and explore their soul stories so that they can embody a life of joy, fulfillment, and love, empowering hundreds of people across worldwide community in her immersive workshops, coaching, and online courses. Katara helps people live a soul-centric life with more clarity and purpose. She's recently a new mother to a dragon son and integrating into life a memento and exploring with awe how her own soul stories and those with her family are unfolding. So again, congratulations on the baby, on the
Thank
small
you.
dragon.
Ooh, Mama wave.
Yes.
Ooh. How is motherhood?
Well, 2 and I guess a half weeks into motherhood, I
Mm-hmm.
think things are still landing. I mean, as I'm sure that you know, and many of our audience are mothers as well, it's all a bit surreal. So it's taking its time to fully land and definitely feeling all the feels and
Mm,
really just in awe of creation and human life, like to have this little being that's, pretty much dependent on you. So it's pretty wonderful and just surreal.
mm.
Yeah,
Congratulations. He's
thank you.
lovely. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and he comes with his stories, and as we said, he is a little dragon baby born in the year of the dragon, called in on I think on the day of the Lunar New Year when we moved into the dragon year. I was birthing a womb drum. It was my red drum, and we were quite conscious to call this little being in. So it feels like wow,
That's
it's
beautiful.
happening. It's happened.
Such as conception with a drum and a womb drum. How powerful that must have felt
Yeah.
to tell us a little bit more about that. You and your partner made a choice to have a baby and really wove with it. That's powerful.
Yes, definitely. I mean, look, it's always been on our mind and definitely in our intentions, but
Hmm.
I feel, yeah, we felt strongly about being intentional with when. And I mean, of course, we are in the love of dragons here. My brand is Awakening Dragons, and I'm like, I really want a baby dragon. And I was trying not to be attached to that. And so when the lunar year was rolling around, I was like, okay, you know what? There's this drum I need to restring anyways. And that drum also has a special place in my heart because I had made it in a year-long container when I was journeying with 16 other women, preparing for, I guess, pregnancy. It was like a journey of exploring my own cycles, menstruation, what it means to be woman, and all of those things. So we had made a drum as part of that journey.
Mm,
But I always felt it was a bit loose, and there's nothing like a drum that's a bit flat and that you don't play. So
mm,
I had decided that for that occasion of the Lunar New Year, I'm like, you know what? It's time to just shake up that energy a bit. So I had dyed it fully red. I had made it an inside out drum. So the furry bits on the outside, allowing the inside of ourselves to be seen and to kind of, yeah, be inside out.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, really consciously wove that and wove our prayers and our intentions to call the little being in. And within, I think, yeah, within a month and a half, we were pregnant.
Wow. So it's so different to do conscious conception than and when you're weaving with it, like you're saying, I think that's alchemical and magical, especially working with the elementals. And
Mm,
I wonder too, because we had a little experience, you and I think
mm.
it's kind of around your pregnancy somewhat. Um,
That's right.
can I share a little bit about that and ask
Yes, please,
questions about
please.
that? So, Katara happened to be traveling through on a trip, and I'll let you say more about that yourself. But at one point, you were in Japan, and I have really strong ties to Japanese culture through my angelic body and a lot of my stories I tell. And when you landed there, we suddenly connected. And we were finding that while you were traveling to temples, I would sync up with where you were, and it was suddenly like talk to Katara, and I would be chatting with you, and we would like start discussing where you were at and what was happening there. And we'd have these little ceremonial moments. And Japan was really a special one. What do you remember about that? There was a dragon connected to that, I believe, that we were seeing.
Mm, yes, yes, that's right. I think one of the black dragons. Yeah, Japan definitely is very special part of the story. So our son, we have named him Ryu, which is the Japanese word for dragon, actually. And so, look, the little Bubba, while in the womb, has already traveled 7 countries. And
Mm,
I did feel that every place we were going, there was something that was either getting picked up, some story coming into completion, or just some energy to come, into remembrance. And so Japan was a big one. And of course, as you know, the dragons are everywhere in the temple fronts. But then we'd be visiting a lake, and it would be some story or myth about there's a dragon that's in this lake, and then, something or other. And there's always so much dragon energy. And I definitely felt, not unlike the dragons that you have pictured in your background right now. I just felt so much water energy.
mm.
Also the cloud and kind of thunder energy as well. And I did feel, the angelic presence well, I didn't know it was my son at that time, but in the Baba. So it just felt like an immersion, almost like I was in a womb space, if I could say that. And then the dragon that you speak of that we connected to, I think his name was Mystic or Mystique, perhaps, and it was a guardian, a dragon, and just feeling lots of that while we were traveling there. And that imprint of the energy definitely has, come with me, and, with his name as well. So we haven't even begun to fully explore the soul stories connected through Japan or through the Dragon King or anything like that, but I can feel it bubbling and kind of ready to emerge.
Yeah, Mystic was a dragon we were working with in the temples that I think I introduced you to, but Mystic wasn't connected per se to that's Mystic is a celestial dragon. But the dragon of Japan that I think we were connecting with was a god of the
That's
water.
right. Mm-hmm.
And the name of that dragon is similar to your son's name. But what we also discovered was it's also similar to my son's name. And the conceived my son, I was in Japan.
Yes, that's
Um,
right.
so we were connecting to this dragon that is connected maybe to some alignment with that kind of idea of connecting into the dragon energy that's there with our babies. Now my baby's not such a baby anymore. He's 23. You know, he's a parkour champion.
Mm,
But he's definitely got the water dragon thing going on with him. And
yeah.
I I thought that was really amazing. Also, Barbara and I were traveling through the temples of light in the journey course that I teach. And I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was fascinating that where you were feeling drawn to travel were temple sites. And
Mm,
your description of how you were taking in information really fits and matches with what we experienced. Didn't, Barbara remember going through the temples. When we would go into temples, we would have deep remembering and connection there. And we were absorbing and taking information in from the temples. And I feel like that's part of Earth ascension and remembering that we're going through right now is taking
Mm,
back information
Yeah.
and knowledge, oftentimes that's been lost, and reclaiming that information and then having it become integrated such that we can embody it and then bring it into the world in some meaningful way. Have you noticed since you made a transition also from where you were living, you and your husband moved, a big move. You were in
mm,
Australia and now you're in Italy.
that's
And
right.
Italy is your husband's homeland, is that right?
That's right.
So you
Yes.
moved back to family, and so you also came out of that journey relocating and into a new culture and another place altogether. You haven't lived in Italy before. This is the first time for you, I
Not
believe.
in Italy, but I'm no stranger to moving. So
Mm,
it is definitely, well, who knows when the next move will be. I'm always open to that. But I used to live in the Middle East. I also have lived in Eastern Europe, in Serbia before, and I come from Canada. So a little bit of, traveling around. And then Australia for the 4 years preceding here. And what I find interesting is, that 4 years in Australia, really down under and on the other side of the world, having come from, the Northern Hemisphere, really felt like it turned me upside down. Really did feel like it dropped me into another womb space, into, a soul searching of many sorts, and needing to connect and meet with my husband at that time. And so I guess at the some kind of peak or transition moment, it was like, right, so we're not going to nest or build our family here. Where are we going? And so the decision to come to Italy was quite natural, and it's really fascinating because it's the one of the first times that I've moved where I actually feel a part of me is being suppressed and not able to express because of language barriers. Now,
mm,
even though I lived in the Middle East and I lived in, Eastern Europe, like English was still
Yeah.
used everywhere and it was not an issue.
mm,
Whereas here, I feel like so far, until I be fluent in Italian, I feel a bit stifled. I feel like, oh, I'm not able to be all of myself.
mm, mm,
That's one part. But I also find it very interesting that our energies have been called back, to this land, to his homelands, to probably bring change, to create change. Because, if I look around, like I have to say that this is all a bit different.
mhm,
It's not as free to be talking about dragons and whatever dimensions and ascension. Like it's not a common dinner conversation.
mhm,
So the feeling of being different, the feeling of you're here, we are here to do great things, like can be a bit overwhelming, but also very exciting. And of course, the water energy has also traveled with us. We are right in front of Lake Como, which
mm,
itself has another little dragon legend. Apparently, it's more like a little dragon dinosaur sounding name. Its very own Loch Ness monster type fable. So yeah, I find it all kind of coming together. And I'm sure in hindsight, when we look back, there's going to be, wow, that makes perfect sense of why we're here.
wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. So I'm really appreciating coming to a new culture when you have a language barrier that makes you feel like you can't really connect fully. And that's hard. It's hard on our hearts because our longing for connection is where everything really, for those of us who are practicing being sensitive and aware,
Mm,
that sense of connection is where we feel we meet in the heart. And I can imagine that's a bit challenging. Hopefully, having family and people who love you around you is helping with that, and having a
absolutely.
baby to hold on to too. But you have sisters, so reach out to us. We need some
Absolutely.
like-minded love.
Mm,
And I'm also wondering as well that the dragons will also help you, right? Because, they've come into this planet for that reason to help us to get that message out. So I
mm,
think I just saw this image of when you talked about being near Lake Como. like how, and I thought my geography is right. You also like you border on Switzerland if you're Lake Como.
Yes, that's right.
So I just got the chills when I said that. I just feel like there's a lot of dragon energy, and a lot of it still needs to be found, which is connected in with a connection that I've recently made, which is ice dragons and
Mm,
Icelandic dragons. And they've been telling me that they've been under the ice for many, many, many lifetimes, and they're just coming as the globe is warming. It's allowing them to set, they're being set free. And I just saw this image of Switzerland and Italy and just dragons all around that lake. So I think the
yeah.
dragons are here to help you.
Well, they're definitely here. I mean, I can't deny that. And during
Yeah.
the birth, it was so powerful. I mean,
Wow.
the bits and pieces that I remember, I could feel like the dragon energy kind of descending at some point and just being around. Then I can feel one of my elder and ancient dragon selves kind of emerging. And I was like, wow, like just really feeling
Mm-hmm.
held in that space. And then I could feel my son's dragon presence also there. And I'm just like, oh my God, when you're like witnessing something happen, like you're in it, but you're also witnessing
Mm-hmm.
it. And I was just feeling things were happening in the cosmos. It's almost like, those Marvel movies where they zoom you out into some, far away. It felt like it was bringing me into the cosmos and it was waiting for the perfect alignment of when Ryu was going to come through. And then quickly, a minute later, I'd be out of the contraction and the pause. And then I'd be like so in my body and I'd be like, oh God, I'm just taking a breath. So it was that I'm all the way out there and then I'm all the way here. I'm feeling all the dragons and all the cosmos and that surrealness. And then I was just like, I'm just feeling my body. Like it was just this juxtaposition of that. But absolutely, I think there's a lot of energy to discover here. And there's a few of our dragon friends from the Dragon Thunder Summit, who are also here. Like, I think we're here to make new connections with the dragons, with the people, with the land, and all the spirits that have been here probably for eons before we have been.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just think about the what's in the Alps, huh, Barbara?
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
Alps. And
It
the
and it
Italian
keeps
Alps are amazing. They're
yes.
really
Yeah.
Mm,
cool.
Yeah. And it was when I was a child, when I was in school in England, I actually did two trips to Switzerland. I was absolutely now I can understand why, but back then I was just fascinated with the Alps, with the
Mm-hmm.
mountains, with glaciers. I mean, geography was like my favorite subject, and I went on two school trips to Switzerland around Lake Como, but because I wasn't at all aware then about dragons, but now I understand my sort of fascination with that country. So
mhm.
it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Well, I
But yeah.
will be more in tune with that when I cross over to the other side. So my husband will be working on the Swiss side. That's why we're choosing
Oh,
to live
wow.
right here. So we're kind of
Interesting.
always, 1 foot here, 1 foot there.
Oh,
And when you speak of the mountains, yeah, there is a little difference in that energy. It's like
Yeah.
in the dragon energy, I mean, it's even mountain dragons, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Like the mountains that we see on the lake, which is the view that I birthed to, is like stoic mountains and stunning lake in front of me. There's a power there just in those very physical mountains. But I guess if you go a few layers deeper and to explore the beings who reside
Yeah.
there, that
Yeah.
magic is yes, it's still revealing itself a little bit by little bit because new mom could be easily overwhelmed. So I've got time.
Well, it's
Like,
good that they're honoring that, right? Because sometimes they get way too excited and they like just, or their
mhm.
energy will come at you. So they're obviously being very respectful.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also
Well,
noticed when I was in Italy in September, visiting some of those Alps, I discovered from the local people that there was a lot of history there with other cultures. There were places we were walking to up in the Alps where there were waterfalls and artifacts from the Celtics that
Mm.
left there. And I trace that back even to Vikings. And so there's a huge amount of history all over the earth like that, where cultures have crossed. And
Yeah,
because Italy is sitting in the middle of, all these other countries that have crossed over into its borders and for centuries been visited, I think there's a lot there, to that kind of, I don't know, I almost feel like
converge.
belly button, like it merges in there. Do you feel that? I feel this
Well,
sense.
when you speak of it, I think I can sense that. I think because there's so much history here
Mm-hmm.
and so many peoples who have traversed these lands,
Yep.
it feels like there's like a cauldron of different energies. And I suppose we get the potion that we need, or the memories that we need when we come through this portal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, interesting that I've got a little portal behind me, but that's what it feels like. It feels like, there's a lot here. There's a lot of magic, there's a lot of history, there's a
Yeah.
lot of dark energy. We can't ignore that. And there's a lot of probably new, emerging
Mm-hmm.
energies, dragons, whatever they be.
Yes.
So I think if you're walking here with your eyes open, your mind and your soul open, I suppose it could be a lot of different things that we can tap into and explore.
Mhm.
And for me, as a remembrance as well, for me, I think everything is can be a remembering
Mm-hmm.
pieces of you. And I feel that whatever past lives I've had in Europe, they feel distant. Like I feel like I've probably been Asian for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but maybe it's time that I'm reconnecting to the European lineage, which is interesting as my husband's European and blah blah blah. So yeah, there's a lot unfolding, a lot of remembering that maybe goes way back.
That's powerful. I think that feeling of pulling in too that happens there as we travel on the earth, we find that places hold energy just like they do in our chakras in certain ways. So I always look for the body of the place I'm in, like where is this body place? And you mentioned it like when you were in Australia, that was a really deep rooting place. And I feel like the red earth of Australia is
Mm,
rooted into the root chakra. You get that feeling of the history of the earth that's written there, especially with dream time. And when you come to this
absolutely.
idea of womb, and we were just talking about that energy collecting, I think of the second chakra, the world meets in
Mm,
the second chakra.
mm,
And it feels very second chakra to me when I tune into that with you. I believe that when I was teaching Vision Quest and being a person, I take people out into nature to do deep
mhm.
immersive experiences. And in my teachings with my native ancestors, we were taught to understand that the earth has a body and it's not one single body. It's
Yeah.
the mountains are bodies plural. And so when we go into tuning into mountains and the earth, and even in the plains and the prairies, you can find it not just in mountains, but I do believe that I see the body in the mountains more easily. Oftentimes I can see
Mm,
the head, I can see where the body of the mountain is. And sometimes when I find myself paying more attention to that, I notice I'm going to certain places. And oftentimes I try to find the heart.
yeah.
The thing about the heart. Always looking for the heart. Aren't you all? It's like you
Well, yeah.
looking for that
Mhm.
connection, but I'm also
Yeah.
paying attention to just where I am and okay, look, ooh. And I think that's really exciting that you're noticing that and paying attention to it. And I think that gives a lot of richness to understanding things that we're standing on.
Mhm.
The earth is where we get understanding. And I believe
Mhm.
that we're paying attention to that. We get so much information and
Mhm.
information you can't get in books, information you can't read someplace. We
Right.
get direct information. And
Yeah.
I
So,
love that you
yeah.
have that awareness and you're
Yeah. I
practicing
was
that.
also thinking of the ley lines when you were talking about reconnecting in Europe. I was thinking of, the fact that we know the ley lines that come from England all the way through, the where you are now. And I'm just wondering if that's what you're going to be connecting to, because
Well, funny.
there's more
I do
powerful
wonder about the ley
ley lines.
lines. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know if there's.
yeah, some people call them dragon lines, but definitely,
Mhm.
and it felt like the connection was from, from England coming through into, France, Spain, Italy.
Mm.
But maybe you'll connect to some of those.
Yeah, I'd be really curious where the ley lines are.
So,
So
mhm,
when I was in Australia, I felt like I felt them a lot more, different portals and places that I visited. And the last town that I lived in actually was connected to one of the major ley lines or dragon song lines, whatever,
yeah.
that passed from Bali through Burnsdale. And it's such a
Mhm.
random town. Like you're never gonna, know what this town is. And I was like, oh, what are the chances that I ended up at the tail of this ley line, as it exits Australia? But so I took a little, curious look online of what passes through Italy, but I can't find any major lines, at least not where I was looking. So
Mhm.
maybe some things are not mapped. I mean, surely there's energy that's, not we're map makers and not just following them. So yeah,
Mm.
I think it'd be interesting to connect into the earth energies and just
Oh,
see what's there. But I
yeah.
didn't notice any specific ley lines that were coming through this part of Italy.
Also, I
Right.
will tell you, when I've done some work with the dragons in the forests, the lines that they show me are not straight.
Mm,
They oftentimes are weaving from the roots of the trees, and they move like they
Mhm.
weave, and they're curved, and
Yeah.
they're not straight lines. So be open to the roundness of things.
yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
want to.
So I did a quick Google search. So,
Yep.
but it looks like the ley lines that go through it from the tip of Ireland
Mm,
all the way across France, like I said, Italy, um, through the bottom of Italy, right across Greece, and ends in Israel.
So it goes to the bottom of Italy, does it?
Yes, the boot part. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then
Well,
maybe
actually,
that's
the
our
top.
summer
Yeah, the top.
vacation.
Yeah, but yeah, but what I thought it was interesting that that ley line starts just off the coast of Ireland
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
ends in Israel. So,
Yeah.
but that's just a quick Google search. It was just this one ley line. I just Googled ley lines in Italy and it brought that one
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you know my discoveries.
Yeah.
Where I'll be
Happy,
called to travel.
happy exploring all that.
Well, right now, not exploring anything yet. In our custom and tradition, the first 30 days we don't leave the house, the mom and the baba.
You're
It's a
laying
little bit of protection from the elements and just really honoring the healing and postpartum period. So I'm about 2.5 weeks in. So right about Christmas time, I'll be ready to explore and take the baby out. It'll be its full month birthday, which also is a big thing. Usually that's the time when we introduce the baby to the world as well. So yes,
Mhm.
little dragon will be well, he might get to visit Lake Como.
How
Yeah.
beautiful. I love laying in. I think that's wonderful. And it's really important. It's an incredible bonding time for you all. And I
Mhm.
celebrate that you're having that time and that experience.
Mhm.
Right now, for you, as a mother, learning how to really the language of a baby. Babies don't have verbal capacities yet, so
Mm,
noticing that we have to learn the baby's language. What do their cries mean, and what are that whole new form of communication is. It's a real powerful time for a mother and a baby.
mm.
I think laying in helps you with that bonding communication with your baby,
Mhm.
being close.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I'm so
Yeah.
happy you're having that time
Yeah.
together.
And
Uh,
I think that's is it part of your culture, but also in Europe. So my kids were born in England, and there was definitely we did 2 weeks laying in, but it used to be mine so we're talking about 30, almost 40 years ago. But there was actually specific hospitals that you
Mm,
went to, just you and your baby, whether it was number one, number two, number three, and you had 2 weeks
mm,
to establish nursing, establish, all of those sort of things. So I think it's cultural. And I don't even know if that happens now in England, but because here in America, you have a C-section, you get, a couple of days and you're out. And I was horrified when I first moved here and people were like home after day 2 of a C-section. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Well, certainly the birth preparation and experience, I think, has shown me a lot in, let's call it whatever the norm is, has shown me a lot in conditioning, like how people are just to just go with, well, everybody else goes to the hospital. So I think, I don't know what the rates are in the US. A few of the books I read are from US authors, but in Italy, I think the birth of home rate is less than 1%. I had a pediatrician who came to the house a couple of days after, and in his 40-year career as a pediatrician, he's experienced or been to 3 home birth visits. Okay. So that says a lot. In 40 years, that's all he's, experienced. And every time that I would mention having a home birth, whether it's to my mom or my mother-in-law's, it was like this horror of like, are you going to be safe? Okay. And I'm not, judging that at all. I think even I did consider a hospital birth because it is like, I don't know what the F I'm doing, as a first time mother.
Right.
But over time and over some re-education and discovery, it was very much a lesson of self-empowerment, which I think many people say. But even when it came to the birth itself, so I pretty much labored on my own because he didn't come early. He came at the end of the 38th week, but my 2 friends that were supposed to fly from Australia hadn't come yet. The midwife was on her way, but she was 3 hours away.
Right.
And because of the timing, my husband also wasn't home at that time. And lo and behold, I had a full throttle labor, like I'm talking about 2.5 hours, and the baby was out.
Wow.
And the midwife came in the final 20 minutes. And in hindsight, looking back, yeah, pretty much. Because I'm like, I am not doing a free birth. Like, I do not know what to do with this. And it really was like, in hindsight, looking back, maybe I just, I did need that experience. It was such an inner resourcing of, I can do this.
Right.
And such a remembrance too, like the grandmothers came, the ancestral energy came, and I can just feel the remembrance of this body, these bodies, have been there, have done it for centuries and lifetimes, and did not have hospitals and did not have midwives and doulas and did not have, forceps and all of those things. And we just did it.
Right.
And the more that we are exposed to, I guess, I don't know if they're called assisted births or just intervened births with all of these things, we forget our power. So look, I'm grateful for the experience, but it's also, like just so much that I learned about myself, about my inner capability. And as I said, amazed at all the inner experiences that happen, because it's not just a physical thing. Right? Like if our awareness is open to that, it is not just popping out a baby. There's a lot going on.
Right. And, it's interesting. You say that in Italy, they don't do that. Now, when I had my children, a doctor did not deliver your child unless you had a C-section. It was midwives only. And you only went into the hospital.
Yeah.
There was more people have their kids born at home. I mean, my grandmother, I remember my grandmother telling me that she thought that the person that came to the house with the bag brought the baby, because they would appear with a bag and then a baby would appear and then they would leave, right? So that's how she thought babies were delivered. So it goes back many generations in England, but I think because of litigation, because of all this other stuff that's happened, I've heard it's become, people feel it's not safe anymore. Now, I'm talking just less than 40 years ago. They used to have what they called a flying squad. So if you started to get into difficulty with your labor at home, a quick phone call, and we're talking a quick, like 15 minutes, there were people there that scooped you up and got you to a hospital. So it was safer at home because, once you're in the hospital, you've got infection, you've got all of that stuff, right? unfortunately for me, my son was a breech and
Mm.
I landed up with no choice. I was going to go for the whole natural thing. And they were like, yeah, no, that's not happening. You need a C-section because he's not coming out the right way. But I think that it's switched the other way in England because people are more scared about what happens if something goes. And 99% of the time, nothing goes wrong at birth, right? But
But
there's
that's
always that.
life, isn't it? Like, what if
Yeah,
we
yeah,
just prepared ourselves? Like, what if something happens? Like, something's always going to be happening. But that's the
right.
experience that you're probably destined to have because, like, my midwife, and I'm sure many of them, they do deliver breech babies. They wouldn't
Yes, of
have
course.
breech babies if
Absolutely.
they weren't possible to
Oh,
come out.
yeah. And of course, knowing what I don't know, I mean, so I was told, and again, I was very much for having the whole natural birth. And I was told that if I went into labor at night, there were two midwives that would deliver a breech, right? But then,
Yeah.
once it becomes, then it was my age, and then there was all these other
Oh,
things they put
sure.
in, you know, like you're too old,
A
you're
similar
not going to, this
experience.
one's going to parachute out. There was all that. And it's different now when I look back on it almost 40 years later and I go, I could have done that, but they were like, absolutely, you're
But
not.
they're still saying that, right? Like, I'm a
I know,
geriatric
it's still,
mom at 40. People
yeah,
should, it's not
it's
safe. In
unacceptable.
fact,
I
a
know.
couple of the midwives that interviewed me,
Mhm.
asked, they
If you were too
basically
old.
said, if you're 40 and over, I won't take you as a client. And I was like,
Um,
I'm probably healthier than some of the 20-year-olds that are giving birth right
yeah,
now.
yes. Actually, I think the
So,
term was
Yeah.
geriatric prima
Oh,
gravida. And I'm
yeah.
like, I hate that. Stop saying
yeah.
that.
I know it's such labels. And
I
let's
know
get
it's
to the reality
the
of it.
old
The word
person,
safe. Like, what is actually safe?
Mm-hmm.
right?
Like, if we
And
come back to,
it's
are we talking
circumstances,
about scientific evidence, like evidence-based, right? Like, I'm for science, but I'm also for natural everything. And a
right?
lot of their, things of risk of, not safe and all of that. It's like, what do you even determine as safe? And your interventions are for the hospital's ease and for your
Mm-hmm.
profits and for, litigation and all that, and
Yeah,
absolutely not for the safety of the child and mom.
child. No,
Yeah.
because there's
There's
more
also,
risk. Yeah, there's much more risk. I think with a high tech
mhm.
labor, there's much more risk to mother and to child
But there's also
because we're
Yeah.
using
training and
anesthesia. Yeah.
education that women go through. I know here in America, when I was pregnant, I've had three children, and my first child was breech, and I wasn't a healer yet. And I remember I had two doctors, and one who was like, "Well, I'll let you try," and the other one was like, "You're having a cesarean." So if I went into labor with one guy, I could try to deliver a breech baby. And the other guy was like,
Yeah.
your your pelvis is narrow, you're not gonna do it. You're gonna be at risk. You're gonna put
How
you
do they know? Are they measuring? Did they
it,
actually
it
measure
was
your
the
pelvis?
older
Yeah.
guy who had predetermined by looking at me. But you know what? He was right. So
Mm.
I'll tell you this, he was correct. So I had a cesarean with my first birth. And then a lot of my friends were doing midwifery and they were talking to midwives and they were looking at home birthing. And I have such
Hmm.
an indigenous path that
Yeah.
I remember, the visions of women holding on to the birch bark branch and crouching into to deliver a baby and going into that place of laboring in the woods. And then I studied water births. And what was
Hmm.
really interesting was I planned to water birth. I wanted to have natural childbirth, and my body couldn't do it. And it was interesting. One midwife actually like judged me for it. It was like
Oh,
criticism
wow.
from a midwife. Well, when I delivered my third son, I tried to do a VBAC, which is a vaginal delivery after a cesarean. And I
Yeah.
was water laboring. I had a pool, I had a tub, I had my midwife
Hmm.
coming to visit, and I couldn't dilate. My body didn't dilate because my pelvis was so narrow that he didn't drop down and get engaged, and which is what makes you flower to birth. So
Mm.
a month after that really intense birth, because I wound up having an emergency cesarean
Mm.
and had to save our lives. It was really life.
Yeah.
when I went through that experience, a month later, I met a woman who had studied midwifery in Iran. And
Yeah.
she came into my house because I was designing a brochure for her midwifery practice because I was doing graphic
Mm.
design. And I laid out this design for her. She came to look at it and she looked at my feet at the door and she goes, "Oh, you can never vaginally deliver." And I was like, "How do you know that?" And she goes, "Oh,
Yeah.
I can tell looking at your feet."
Well,
I
that's
said,
interesting.
"Really?" And she goes, "Yeah, the midwives in Iran taught me how to read women's feet. And I can tell by
Mm.
looking at a woman's feet whether she can do a vaginal delivery or not." She goes, "You can never do it." And I said, "That's been true. And you're a month late."
Mm.
Like I almost died. Where have you been? You know?
Yeah.
But it was
But
in,
look at all that ancient wisdom,
yeah.
Yeah.
No
I mean,
book. Well, I don't know. Maybe she should write a book about how to read feet
well,
and
and
save the women who try, but
there was a woman doing ocean births. And the video I studied, I think was a woman who was in, may have been in Italy. She came to here but her video I think was filmed there. And so it was pretty out there. She was teaching women to do home births and do water birthing. She actually brought some women into the ocean to deliver. I mean,
yeah,
imagine delivering your baby in the ocean. It's like, wow, be
yeah,
really immersed with nature. We're capable of anything. That's
yes.
one of the things I love about human potential. When my mother was delivering babies, Barbara, there weren't midwives here in the US very much. My grandmother delivered at home. My dad was born at home and he was like a 13-pound baby. And
Yeah.
so huge and crazy births happening at home, but a lot of
Oh,
women died too. And
a
then
lot of women died, a lot of babies died. I
mm-hmm,
mean, yeah.
and
I mean,
people
my
didn't
great great grandmother had 21 live births, but
know.
only 11 survived. Imagine delivering 21.
Yeah, my grandmother lost three children.
Yeah,
So,
they,
so they're my dad's mom. And so I know that and I don't think all of those were at birth, but it just the issues of health that we contend with technology and the development of medicine. Truly if I had been born, three or four generations back, I might not be talking to you all right now. You know, women dying in childbirth when they have the kind of body I have and the experience, thank God for modern medicine, because, and
yeah,
in fact, I turned that into a shamanic thing too with my journey. So, but we take the idea of understanding the choices we make and the circumstances we're in and the evolution we're in. And I
mhm,
think it's really great. That we're talking about this because it's really powerful. And I think women need to know they have that power. And I love, Katara, that, I had my third child in my late 30s. I was 39 when my son Rylan was born. So I believe that there's something really powerful about taking back our power. And
mhm,
I really admire you and commend you for your bravery and your certainty of trusting your body. I think we know how to listen to ourselves and know what to do, and giving ourselves permission to say yes to this body and let myself do what it wants to do is
Well,
amazing.
that's a major part of, I think, being human, at least in my journey of trusting this body. I
Yeah.
mean, rewind not that many years back, there was just such a resistance of like, why am I here?
Mhm.
And, not feeling the safety of even being in your body. I mean, so much of trauma or disassociation or soul loss or whatever you want to call it is because we don't feel safe in the body.
Yep.
So, yes, this period and just the, probably even talking about it of all the stories that we may have on our head about what is safe, what is not safe,
Mhm.
about how we own our power and how we can, I suppose, demonstrate it or, take it back, reclaim it. Like it has been very powerful. And to have this birth experience that allows me, to experience just how powerful this human body is and the choice to be able to make choice.
Yeah.
I think that's been yeah, really eye-opening for me.
Yeah. And really powerful too to be in a place where it's not necessarily commonly known or even, you know, held. That also takes a certain kind of bravery to be able to stand in that. So you're very strong. I admire your personal strength and your power that you wield for yourself. And I love that you're breastfeeding.
Well, he was a little bit cryy in the background. I can hear him. Husband was just like, nah, it's I think he
Scared.
needs mama.
You're
So again,
very good.
it's just that beauty of seeing someone just need you in like,
Yeah.
such a sincere and,
Yeah.
unmistakable way. Like it's
Mm.
more than just heartwarming. It's just like, oh my God, like
Right. And
I'm
you also
probably going to
carry,
blink my eye and there'll be some,
yeah.
20-year-old teenager who doesn't want to come home. So I better, appreciate it now.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta love
It,
it. It's true, huh,
yeah.
Barb?
And it is true. I mean, people used to say to me, "Oh, treasure these moments," right? And what happens is like we are in such a hurry to, I mean, I wanted to, I wonder what they sound like talking. So I wanted them to talk, and then when they started talking, I had one that didn't shut up once he started talking. You're like, okay, be careful what you wish for, right? And then I wonder what they're going to look like. I wonder what this, I wonder what that. And then suddenly you literally turn around and they're grown up. And
Hmm.
I still say to mine, like, when did this happen? I just told the other
Yeah.
day, like, my older son it's got another year and he'll be 40. And he keeps saying, it's not far off, I'm going to be 40, Ma. And I'm like, oh my God, like, when did you get that old? And I flash back to my own mother,
Mm.
who I was living in this country. And I called her on my birthday and said, I can't believe I'm 40. And she said to me, when did you get that old? And I'm having that like memory of like,
Flashback.
because you look at, and she said to me afterwards, well, it means if you're getting older, I'm getting older. Right. So, but it was just as it came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, I remember my mum saying that. So yeah, and it's very true. You turn around and, they start kindergarten and then they're in school and then they're graduating their college and that's it. Yeah.
Grow up
But
and
it's
they
all
grow
a fabulous
fast.
journey. Right. But it's
You-
a fabulous journey being a mom or being a dad,
This is
being
when you have the
grandparents.
most control. When
Yeah.
you have control over your kid you'll ever have is right now.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and
true.
that's the lesson of also probably ceding control and not needing to control it all.
Yep.
And that's certainly been a life lesson as well. Like you can plan all you want,
Yep.
and like in births, right? You can plan all you want, but be prepared that plans can change. So
Yeah.
This is
I'm
true.
grateful. I'm grateful for this birth experience to show me
Mm.
so much about our spiritual growth,
Yeah.
about our own evolutionary journey, because I feel like, wow, this really is a portal
Mm.
to accessing more and more information, to accessing different guides, to accessing different lineages, and understanding our karma and our big why of why we're here and why we have the people we have called in, our children, our partners, our family. So
Mhm.
I think there's a lot more to birth that probably I had no interest or didn't have the experience to be talking to, and I'm only beginning, right? Like I'm talking about, I'm 2.5 weeks on the other side. So I'm
Right.
aware of how much power this portal holds.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
hopefully these kind of conversations can help others to see that, to know that, hey, you could have given birth 40 years ago, but there's still stuff you can go back, right? I mean, as you know, in our spiritual work, it doesn't know any time and space. So going back to heal things, going back to heal our
Mhm.
birth experiences, our mothering experiences, our inability to have children experiences, whatever they are. I
That's
think
true.
it's just a pathway for us to know ourselves and to grow spiritually,
Mhm.
and therefore just as human beings and
Mm.
as spiritual beings in a human body.
Mhm.
That's so true. Every word you said, really true. In fact, in my journey with healing work, one of the things that we sometimes encounter are things we don't quite understand, like why womb sickness would be happening in a bloodline for generations. And interestingly enough, in ancestral healing work that I do, I tracked a wound sickness with one family to the loss of a mother and child at birth. It was
Yes.
actual grief that was traveling through the bloodline that was creating illnesses in the women in the bloodline. So
Mm,
it's interesting how sometimes those stories of grief, and the interesting part of that, the more interesting part was it was passed on from the father and husband of that.
mm,
He
Mhm.
remarried and had children with his second wife. All of her family and the issue with the womb sickness was traveling through their relationship
mm.
because
Yeah.
his grief got passed on into the bloodline.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
the things that we create that become grief stories are new threads. And I do think that's something for us all to think about, that when we're going through emotional challenges or pain or suffering, the more healing we do on that and that we can, to address it, the less it gets passed on and the less it gets.
100%.
And so when we do this integration piece of taking responsibility for our experience and healing it, then we don't pass it on. And that
Yes.
energy for generations to come becomes clearer and freer of that. So I'm with you so deeply in that. And I really believe it's important. Integration to me is everything because and we have to continually do it. I don't feel like it's a singularity. It's a continuum and we're in a continuum with our evolution. So therefore, we are always finding new things to heal. And as a humanity, I believe there's so much going on around us in our world right now, on the shadow side of upheaval and the things that are surfacing that we find disgusting and despicable, the things that we really detest and don't like, such as, the atrocities in our world that we see, and I don't need to name them for you. But to address them and see them in the light is a big part of the big healing we get to take responsibility for now. Whatever we see surfacing in our world is our creation. And when we take responsibility for our creation, so much more can heal, mend, and grow. And our
Mm,
awakeness, our eyes open, and our awareness are very important. Make the
yeah.
choice to be aware, right? Make the choice to be paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, the word choice is so well said because sometimes you just don't want to look at things, and that's a choice, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And on the back of what you're saying, Kelly, which I think is spot on. I feel that people can just focus on their stuff arising, right? Like, let's not solve the world war over there or whatever problem is outside of your sphere. Just
Mhm,
look at your sphere of influence, your sphere of what you're able to work on. And that is enough.
mhm,
I remember back a long time ago, before I wanted children, I used to think, oh, I don't want children. Like, I can't bring them into this world of
mhm,
despair and stuff going on. Like, how can I didn't feel responsible. But over time, I guess I can look at that and feel, you know what, like, I don't have to not bring a child into the world or not do something because something else outside of my control is not perfect yet. I think people just need to make choices about their lives, about what they can choose to heal, what they can choose to work on, and that is enough.
mhm.
We all do our part. I mean, that's what I feel. That's what I'm focusing on. I can't solve everyone's problems.
Well, I do think that that's the flowering language. What you're speaking to is what I call the flowering language. And I have to say, while you've been talking, your hair has had like stars coming through it. She does look like the goddess of the universe right now, feeding her baby, just so you know, you're beautiful. Stunning. What I want to reflect off of what you just said to everyone into our hearts is, Gandhi said that if you want to heal
Mm,
yourself. And
Mhm.
there was a deep truth to that because in the flowering language, which is what I see as the divine language that's coming from source,
mm,
everything blooms from its center.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to be of service to the greater anything, you have to work on your core from your core out. And so
Yes.
we all have to be the flowers of the flowering language. And to be a
Yes.
flower in the flowering language, you have to take care of yourself first and then others. And
Mm-hmm.
that is true, especially for people parenting. Parenting a child is definitely, you have to take care of you in order to be a very good parent. Although at times when things are being pushed and stuff is intense, at times in our lives, our parenting skills go out the window and we need a community. And sometimes we
Yeah.
really need the village. So
Yes.
you discover moments in your life when we are a flower, but we really need the garden. You know,
Yeah.
we really need to be a bouquet. We need to be a bundle, not a stick. You know, in the
Yeah.
old Bible story, stick and bundle, bend a stick, you can break it, put them in a bundle, can't bend it. We are stronger together. It is
Yes.
really true. We do have moments when we need to do self-work, but we also need to be doing more work together. And I think
Mm.
that we're at a very interesting time of relearning tribal consciousness at a global level. And I'm super excited about this time for our humanity because I believe we're at a place where enough of us are realizing that we're all brothers and sisters here on this great big, we're in the same canoe, you know, even though we are all in the same leaky canoe, is how Grandma Agnes Baker Pilgrim would say it to all of us here in the valley. She was our old living Tekelma native grandmother, and
Mm-hmm.
she passed away. She used to say that we're all in the same big leaky canoe, and and I so appreciate the dynamic of that, the infinite and the small. When you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that, there was something about that that's also relative to what we're talking about. In the way of consciousness, to think of the infinite, the expandedness of everything being everything, and then the small, the infant, the littlest thing you can think of. And when you're pregnant, oftentimes women who are in conscious awareness feel that,
Yeah. Mm.
believe that the forming of a life in your body gives you that small connection, but that baby's coming with the infinite, and you feel that soul's light, and it's amazing.
Absolutely.
And you had that experience, and
Mm.
we're speaking to it about while you were pregnant and what you're, and I gotta say, I had that same conscious experience, especially with my third son, my last child.
Yeah.
It was amazing
Yeah.
having the awareness of it, but more than aware, being in the actual feeling of it. And I believe
Mm.
a capacity to feel is informative
Mm.
in forming us. And when we are properly informed, then we can be responsible, able
Yes.
to respond. And that's where presence and being integrated lands us into that landing
Mm.
in our flower of light and awareness that can then be and act and show up.
Mm.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I love the words and this, spells and spelling, of things. And I guess I'm also encouraged to say, look, if women have had their births and their experiences and we're not aware and not conscious, it doesn't mean that you're missing out. Like I said earlier, you can always go back. You can always go back to have these experiences and the healing. I just wanted to mention that because, yeah, tons of friends or experience out there who were just not as aware, but we're all on the spectrum. I'm sure that there's a whole part of birth that I missed out, whole parts that the body was busy doing what it needs to do and didn't get all the information. So I definitely at some point will regress back to be back in those moments to say what else is there for me? What other medicine is there?
Mm.
um and even in your point of saying coming together in community in the garden, as a village. I think that even the work that you guys are doing here, you know, like bringing like-minded individuals and beings together to talk about what matters is part of community, is sharing in community, is building community. And I appreciate you and value your work in doing that.
Thank you. It's
Yeah,
been
thank you.
lovely having you
Yeah,
on our
yeah,
show and your little Ruru. Ooh, he's
yeah.
so cute.
Yes, he wanted to be part. I think he was part of my other podcast or series I did, which was about birth, actually. It was called The Other Side of the Birth Portal, which I interviewed a few women, mothers, magas, and crone, apprentice to crone, and just talking about the birth experience and exactly how much that empowered them to do their life's work. And so I look forward to that and learning from the wisdom of those who have birthed before me and who have birthed businesses and podcasts and all the things. So thank you, sisters,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
doing the work and
Yeah,
being the wise and guiding people like myself.
yeah, that's
Thank
great.
you. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
I think
beautiful.
that, yeah, it's a beautiful end to our podcast.
And really, I want to honor the spoke of what you were speaking to in the wheel of honoring all beings because we're all different and every woman has her journey. And some women get to have a flowering yoni that opens and lets them birth naturally, and some of us don't.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean we're any less a human or any less a person.
No,
And so
all
to
is perfect.
honor with no judgment our paths and their journeys and where they take us and whatever our learning is in the medicine of our experience. So we honor all beings, and we especially, Barbara and I, really hold that to be a part of how we be in the world and see in the world as elders and as of women who have walked through our own fires, our breech births, our special children. And
Yeah,
Yes.
we've had special children, both of us, who needed other kinds of mothering, and we're unique.
Mm.
We both have children who have had our needs as mothers in unique ways, and so our children are not always um, uh, just our children living their own lives. Sometimes we become
Yeah.
more embodied as mothers because of the needs of our children. And so the circumstances and the things that we walk through dictate how we be mothers and how we be mothers to those that we brought in, and then how we be mothers to those we didn't bring in. And because I believe as elders and healers, we're mothering a lot of people and guiding and supporting a lot of people. And we are all three of us doing that. And as wise women, as holy women, as spiritually awake women who are healers. And so keep making drums, Katara, and enjoy your laying in time for this moment.
Thank
We
you.
we just hold you in so many blessings and celebrate your motherhood and your lovely new baby and blessings to your family and your new time in Italy. And we hope in maybe some of your like-minded friends will find their way to you in Italy and wherever else your path is taking you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for all the wishes and the
thank you.
blessings and the beautiful opportunity to be here on the podcast.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We will be
Thank
putting
you.
it up. Everybody, please subscribe and like our channel. And we will be getting ready to bring you our next one this next month and a happy wrap up to the end of this year. Thank you for everyone who has started following us and being with Barbara and I on these shows. We're really enjoying doing it, and hopefully it will continue to blossom too.
Yeah,
So,
and we'll see you in the year of the. Oh no, well, next year after the year of the dragon is the year of the snake, but that's not till the end of January, right?
we have a
Somewhere
little
around
bit of
That's
time.
right. End of
time,
January.
January. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we still got another month, but a lot of people are saying because it's the end of the year, it's the end of the year of the dragon. But it's going to be an interesting year next year, the year of the snake. The
It's so,
Kundalini is being released.
woo.
Woo.
Yes.
Yeah,
Feeling it. Feeling it. Wow.
yeah.
Well, beautiful, happy holidays and holy days to all of you, to all of our friends out there, and many, many blessings. And we look forward to connecting with you again sometime, Katara. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for being with us.
Absolutely.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.